September 9th, 1939. The passenger liner Athenia slips beneath the North Atlantic waves, torpedoed just hours after Britain declared war on Germany. 117 souls lost. Aboard U-30, Oberleutnant Fritz Julius Lemp watches through his periscope as lifeboats pull away from the sinking ship. He has just fired the opening shot of the Battle of the Atlantic, a campaign that will consume 6 years, thousands of ships, and transform the ocean floor into the largest graveyard in human history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What Lemp cannot know, standing in that cramped control room with salt water condensing on the steel bulkheads around him, is that he has also fired the opening shot in a mathematical certainty. Of the 1,162 German submarines that will be built during the coming war, 785 will never return home. The young men crowding into Germany's submarine schools at this moment, enthusiastic volunteers eager to join the Kriegsmarine's elite U-boat force, are statistically walking dead. 3 out of every 4 submariners who put to sea will die in their iron coffins at the bottom of the Atlantic. The mathematics are inexorable. The casualty rate will reach 75%. Out of approximately 40,000 men who serve in the U-boat force, 28,000 to 30,000 will perish. 5,000 more will end the war in Allied prisoner of war camps. Only 6,500 will survive as free men. These numbers represent more than statistics. They represent the systematic destruction of an entire military force, a generational catastrophe concentrated in steel tubes beneath the waves. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. But in September 1939, none of this is apparent. The war is hours old. U-boat commanders return to their bases in western France, to ports like Lorient and Saint-Nazaire, flying victory pennants from their conning towers. Each pennant represents a merchant ship sent to the bottom. The crews are fated as heroes. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commanding the U-boat force, studies the reports with satisfaction. His submarines are achieving what he calls the first happy time. The strategic situation appears favourable to Germany. The Royal Navy begins the war with 57 submarines of its own, but lacks sufficient surface escorts to protect Britain's maritime lifelines. Merchant ships sail independently, without convoy protection, making them easy targets. U-boat tactics are straightforward and effective. Commanders operate on the surface at night, using their diesel engines for speed, hunting by moonlight and starlight. The submarines present tiny silhouettes against the dark ocean, nearly impossible to spot visually before torpedoes are launched. During daylight hours or when threatened, the U-boats submerge. Here lies their greatest tactical advantage. In 1939, a submerged submarine is essentially invisible. The prevailing doctrine taught at every naval academy holds that diving means disappearing. The ocean depths provide sanctuary. Surface ships might detect a submarine's passage through hydrophone listening, but only if the boat makes noise. A U-boat running submerged on silent electric motors, its diesel engines shut down, its crew moving carefully to avoid unnecessary sound, becomes a ghost. This belief in underwater invisibility permeates German submarine doctrine at every level. Training manuals emphasize that the ocean absorbs sound and masks movement. Instructors at the submarine school in Pillow teach young officers that Allied listening devices, primitive hydrophones carried over from the Great War, can only detect loud machinery noise. Maintain silence after diving and you are safe. This certainty shapes every tactical decision, every operational plan, every strategic calculation. The early months confirm these assumptions. U-boat commanders like Günther Prien, Otto Kretschmer, and Joachim Schepke become household names in Germany. Prien achieves legendary status in October 1939 when U-47 penetrates the British naval base at Scapa Flow and sinks the battleship Royal Oak, in killing 833 sailors. The audacity of the attack electrifies the German public. If U-boats can strike the Royal Navy in its own harbour, what cannot they accomplish in the open ocean? Through 1940 and into 1941, German submarines operate with carefully cultivated confidence. The mathematics favour them overwhelmingly. By mid-1940, Dönitz commands more than 100 operational boats. Each submarine carries approximately 48 crew members, from the commander down through watch officers, torpedo mechanics, diesel engineers, radio operators, and ordinary seamen. These crews are trained to exceptional standards. German submarine training is rigorous, selective, demanding. Only the most capable candidates earn the right to wear the U-boat badge. The submariners develop their own culture, distinct from the surface navy. They are volunteers, every one. No conscripts serve aboard U-boats. The work is too demanding, the conditions too harsh, the psychological strain too intense for anyone who does not actively choose this service. In return, submarine crews receive better food than surface sailors, slightly more generous leave, and the prestige that comes with serving in an elite force. More importantly, they receive the conviction that they are Germany's most effective weapon against Britain. The strategic logic appears sound. Britain is an island nation dependent on maritime imports for survival. Cut the shipping lanes and Britain will starve, will run out of fuel, will be unable to continue the war. The U-boats are the blade at Britain's throat. This is not propaganda, but calculated strategy based on historical precedent. In the Great War, German submarines nearly succeeded in starving Britain into submission. Only the last-minute adoption of the convoy system in 1917 prevented British defeat. Dönitz studies these lessons obsessively. He understands that his submarines must sink merchant tonnage faster than Allied shipyards can replace it. The calculation is brutally simple. If U-boats destroy ships at a rate exceeding new construction, Britain loses. The exchange ratio must favour Germany. Through 1940 and 1941, it does. German submarines are sinking approximately 200,000 tons of Allied shipping per month, while losing fewer than 5 U-boats monthly. Individual boats rack up astonishing scores. U-48, commanded by Herbert Schulze, sinks 51,000 tons over 8 patrols. U-99, under Otto Kretschmer, destroys more than 200,000 tons, making Kretschmer the top-scoring U-boat ace of the war. These commanders are tacticians of genius, developing techniques that will become standard doctrine. Kretschmer pioneers the tactic of penetrating inside convoy formations at night, surfacing in the middle of merchant columns where escorts cannot maneuver easily, firing torpedoes at point-blank range from both bow and stern tubes before racing away on the surface at high speed. The psychological advantage is immense. Merchant sailors know they face an invisible enemy. At any moment, without warning, a torpedo might strike. The explosion rips through the hull below the waterline. Seawater floods in with tremendous pressure. Ships carrying heavy cargo sink in minutes, sometimes seconds. Crews have no time to launch lifeboats. Men trapped below decks drown in darkness. As compartments fill with freezing Atlantic water, those who reach the surface face hypothermia. The North Atlantic in winter kills in minutes. For the U-boat crews, these early years build confidence into certainty. Patrol after patrol returns successfully. Losses are manageable. When a boat fails to return, crews attribute it to mine strikes or accidental causes rather than effective enemy action. The concept of statistical inevitability has not yet emerged. Each commander believes his skill. His boat's luck, his crew's discipline will see them through. The mathematics of large numbers, the law of averages, the cold probability that repeated exposure to danger must eventually result in death, these abstract concepts carry no weight against the concrete reality of successful patrols. The German submariners do not yet understand that they are living on borrowed time. The Allied nations, particularly Britain and the United States, have begun a scientific revolution in underwater detection that will transform the strategic balance completely. The technology exists in crude form in 1939. The British call it ASDIC, an acronym whose origins are disputed, but which most believe stands for Anti-Submarine Detection Investigation Committee. The Americans develop similar systems they call Sonar, from sound navigation and ranging. Both work on identical principles. An electrical impulse is converted into a high-frequency sound wave by a quartz crystal oscillator suspended beneath a ship's hull. This sound pulse travels through water at approximately 1,500 meters per second. When the pulse strikes a solid object, a submarine's steel hull, energy reflects back as an echo. By measuring the time between transmission and echo reception, operators calculate range to the target. By rotating the transmitter, they determine bearing. The mathematics are elementary. A 2-second delay between ping and echo means the submarine is 1,500 meters distant. Simple division provides the answer. In 1939, ASDIC systems are primitive. Effective range is limited to 2,000 to 3,500 yards under optimal conditions. The device cannot determine depth, only direction and range. Operators must distinguish genuine submarine echoes from returns bouncing off whales, fish schools, ship wakes, and thermal layers in the water. The equipment works poorly in rough seas. Temperature differences in the ocean create thermoclines that bend sound waves unpredictably. Most critically, ASDIC has a dead zone. At ranges under 200 yards, the transmitted pulse and returning echo merge into confusion. Attacking ships must pass over the submarine's position, dropping depth charges from the stern after losing sonar contact in the final moments of the attack run. These limitations allow German submarines to maintain operational effectiveness through 1940 and into 1941. Experienced, commanders learn to exploit ASDIC's weaknesses. They dive beneath thermal layers where Allied sonar beams cannot reach. They master silent running, shutting down all non-essential machinery, moving at speeds so slow their propellers create minimal cavitation noise. A single man walking heavily through the submarine can give away its position, so crews practice moving like ghosts through their boats. One commander records in his patrol report that his crew learned to communicate entirely through hand signals during attacks, with men breathing as quietly as possible while destroyer propellers thrashed overhead. The Royal Navy's faith in ASDIC, however, has grown dangerously absolute. Senior Admiralty staff believe the submarine threat has been largely overcome. Every destroyer carries the equipment. Training schools produce hundreds of operators. War plans assume convoys protected by ASDIC-equipped escorts will suffer minimal losses. This confidence proves tragically premature. Through 1940, German U-boats continue sinking ships faster than British shipyards can replace them. Winston Churchill later writes that the U-boat peril was the only thing that truly frightened him during the war, more than the Luftwaffe's bombing campaign, more than the threat of German invasion. By December 1941, when the United States enters the war following Pearl Harbor, Admiral Dönitz commands a force exceeding 200 operational submarines. He immediately orders them to American waters, where he correctly anticipates the U.S. Navy will be completely unprepared for submarine warfare. The second happy time begins. American merchant ships sail independently along the east coast, their navigation lights burning brightly, silhouetted against the illuminated shoreline. Cities from New York to Miami refuse to implement blackout regulations, arguing that darkening coastal communities would damage morale and disrupt commerce. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The result is a turkey shoot. U-boat commanders position their submarines just offshore and wait for targets to sail past. Freighters, tankers, and passenger ships are torpedoed within sight of land. Survivors swim ashore through water contaminated with burning fuel oil. Bodies wash up on beaches popular with vacationers. The American public is shocked to discover that German naval vessels have penetrated so close to their shores. Through the first 6 months of 1942, U-boats sink nearly 400 ships in American waters, most while sailing independently without escorts. But even as the second happy time reaches its peak, the strategic balance is shifting. The mathematical equation that will determine the war's outcome is being rewritten not in torpedo calculations, but in acoustic physics. Allied scientists, working in facilities in Britain, the United States, and Canada, are revolutionizing underwater detection systems. The breakthroughs come not from single dramatic inventions, but from systematic research into how sound behaves in seawater. Researchers discover that the ocean is not acoustically uniform. Water contains layers at different temperatures. These temperature differences create channels through which sound waves travel extraordinary distances with minimal energy loss. Under specific conditions, when a layer of slightly warmer water sits beneath colder surface water, a deep sound channel forms. Sound waves entering this channel at the correct angle bounce between upper and lower boundaries, traveling horizontally for hundreds of miles before dissipating. The frequency matters enormously. High-frequency sound above 10 kHz gets absorbed quickly by water molecules, dying within a few miles. Lower frequencies between 100 Hz and 2 kHz travel much farther. Unfortunately for German submarines, their propellers spinning at typical cruising speeds create acoustic signatures in exactly this frequency range. A U-boat's propeller running at 150 revolutions per minute generates a fundamental frequency around 250 Hz, plus harmonics at 500 Hz, 750 Hz, and higher multiples. These frequencies happen to match almost perfectly with the transmission characteristics of deep sound channels. By mid-1942, British and American engineers have developed dramatically improved sonar systems that exploit this research. Power rotation systems replace manual hand cranks, allowing ASDIC heads to scan through wider arcs much more quickly. Streamlined steel domes replace canvas covers, enabling escorts to maintain effective search speeds up to 20 knots instead of being limited to 15 knots. Dual-frequency systems operating at both 14 and 30 kHz provide both long-range detection and precise bearing. Information. Most revolutionary of all is the Type 147 ASDIC set, developed in 1943, which can track submarines in 3 dimensions, providing not just bearing and range, but depth. The industrial capacity behind these improvements is staggering. American shipyards are producing destroyer escorts, corvettes, and frigates at rates Germany cannot hope to match. Each vessel rolls off production lines, equipped with standardized sonar equipment. Parts can be interchanged between ships. Operators can transfer between vessels without retraining. Tactical doctrine becomes uniform across the entire anti-submarine force. The scale of American production transforms sonar from a specialized British naval technology into a ubiquitous Allied anti-submarine weapon. By early 1943, German U-boat commanders begin experiencing an inexplicable increase in detection rates. Boats that once evaded pursuers within an hour find themselves hunted for 5, 6, 7 hours continuously. Depth charges explode at precisely their depth, as though Allied escorts possess supernatural knowledge of submarine positions. Commanders report destroyers appearing from seemingly impossible distances, already at attack speed, positioned perfectly for depth charge runs, as though they had advance warning of the U-boat's location. Aboard U-557 in May 1941, 22-year-old midshipman Herbert Werner experiences his first encounter with Allied sonar. The boat is stalking a convoy 500 nautical miles south of Cape Farewell, Greenland, running at periscope depth. Werner stands his watch, scanning the horizon through the attack periscope, when a sound echoes through the submarine's hull. It is metallic, sharp, unnatural. Nothing in Werner's training has prepared him for this sound. It strikes the hull and reverberates through every compartment like a church bell announcing a funeral. Werner later writes in his private journal, discovered decades after the war, that the sound was unlike anything they had trained for. The British had found them beneath the waves. For 3 years, German U-boat crews had operated with near impunity, believing the ocean depths provided sanctuary from enemy detection. On this spring morning in 1941, Werner and 48 other men aboard U-557 learn a terrifying truth. The ocean no longer hides them. The Allies possess technology that can see through water itself. The commander, Kapitän Lieutenant Otto Paulsen, immediately orders a dive to 200 meters. The crew moves with practiced efficiency, but every man understands what the pinging means. Their greatest tactical advantage, invisibility, has been stripped away by technology they barely understand. The ASDIC operator aboard the British destroyer hunting them is likely a young man himself, perhaps no older than Werner. But he holds an advantage that transcends experience or skill. His equipment can reach through the ocean itself, painting acoustic pictures of objects hundreds of yards distant. What follows is 7 hours of depth charge attacks. U-557 creeps through the depths at 2 knots, rigged for silent running. The crew sits or stands at stations in near-total silence. Every unnecessary system is shut down to conserve battery power. Electric motors run at bare minimum. Men strip to the waist as temperature inside the boat climbs past 35 degrees Celsius. Condensation drips from pipes and bulkheads. The air grows thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, diesel fuel, and fear. After 3 hours submerged, carbon dioxide levels rise dangerously high. Men gasp for breath, their lungs struggling to extract oxygen from air recycled through 49 pairs of lungs dozens of times. The destroyer above them is relentless. Every few minutes, the metallic pinging intensifies, indicating the hunter is closing for another attack. The crew braces. Then come the splashes, the terrible sounds of depth charges entering water overhead. The waiting is unbearable. 7 seconds for a charge set to 100 meters, 12 seconds for 200 meters, 20 seconds for 300 meters. When the explosions come, the entire submarine shudders. The hull groans and pops. Cork insulation falls from overhead. Electrical sparks shoot from control panels. Leaks appear in the pressure hull, thin jets of seawater spraying under tremendous pressure. Damage control parties rush to stuff wooden plugs into cracks, to tighten bolts on pipe joints, to shore up weakened frames. After 7 hours, U-557 has descended to 280 meters, well beyond its designed crush depth of 220 meters. The hull is contracting under pressure, rivets groaning, seams weeping. But Paulsen knows his boat. He knows German engineering has built safety margins into the design. He also knows that rising to shallower depths means detection and certain destruction. So he keeps the boat deep, keeps it silent, and waits for the destroyer's fuel or patience to run out. Finally, mercifully, the pinging stops. The destroyer's propeller noise fades. U-557 waits another 2 hours in the depths, then slowly, carefully begins ascending. When the boat finally surfaces after 9 hours submerged, men stumble onto the conning tower and suck in great lungfuls of clean Atlantic air. Several vomit from the sudden oxygen rush. Others simply stand, faces turned to the sky, savouring survival. But U-557 is one of the lucky boats. Through 1942 and into 1943, more submarines fail to return. The mathematics are shifting inexorably against Germany. In 1941, 35 U-boats were lost from all causes. In 1942, 87 boats failed to return. The trend is accelerating. By early 1943, experienced commanders are sharing, whispered, conversations in officers' messes. Something fundamental has changed. Allied detection capabilities have improved beyond anything German naval intelligence predicted. The crisis arrives in March 1943. Dönitz has assembled massive wolf packs in the North Atlantic, concentrating his forces for a decisive blow against Allied convoys. For 20 days in March, German U-boats come closer to severing Britain's Atlantic lifeline than at any other point in the war. They sink 120 merchant ships, totaling almost 700,000 tons. The Royal Navy's official history later concludes that the Germans never came so near to disrupting communications between the New World and the Old. But March 1943 represents the apex of U-boat effectiveness, not the beginning of renewed dominance. The technological and tactical balance has already shifted decisively. Allied shipyards, particularly in the United States, are producing escort vessels faster than they can be sunk. Very long-range Liberator aircraft carrying both radar and sonar buoys close the mid-Atlantic air gap, where U-boats had previously operated beyond land-based aircraft range. Improved sonar systems provide detection at ranges German commanders think impossible. May 1943 becomes Black May for the Kriegsmarine. 41 U-boats are destroyed. 25% of operational strength vanishes in 31 days. On May 24th, Admiral Dönitz, shocked at these catastrophic losses, orders the temporary withdrawal of U-boats from the North Atlantic. In his war diary, he writes that enemy attempts to restrict operations have succeeded. Allied sea and air anti-submarine forces have increased enormously. Losses have become unsustainable. The statistics tell a brutal story. In the first 3 weeks of May, 96 U-boats were deployed in the North Atlantic. 41 were destroyed. 43% never returned to port. For comparison, the entire year of 1941 had seen 35 U-boat losses from all causes. Black May destroyed more submarines in 3 weeks than an entire year of early war operations. The exchange rate has become catastrophic. 12 merchant ships sunk for every U-boat lost. 2 years earlier, the ratio had been 10 merchant ships per U-boat per patrol, with most boats returning safely. Now, submarines are being destroyed faster than they can sink targets. The mathematics no longer favor Germany. The equation has inverted. Dönitz is losing the tonnage war not because his commanders lack skill or his crews lack courage, but because Allied technology has neutralized the U-boat's primary tactical advantage. Individual boat losses tell the human story behind these statistics. U-463, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Leo Wolfbauer, is detected by ASDIC on May 5th while stalking convoy ONS-5. The destroyer Vidette obtains solid contact and holds it despite the U-boat's evasive maneuvers. For 3 hours, Wolfbauer tries every tactic in the German tactical manual, diving deep, changing course frequently, speeding up and slowing down, releasing bubble decoys. Nothing works. The ASDIC contact remains firm. Finally, with batteries nearly exhausted and the boat taking damage from near-miss depth charges, Wolfbauer surfaces to fight with his deck gun. Vidette's 4-inch guns destroy the submarine in minutes. 46 men die, 3 survive. U-92, commanded by Oberleutnant Werner Happe, is hunted for 6 hours by escorts from convoy SC-129 on May 6th. The boat dives to 300 meters, far beyond its design limits. The hull groans and pops under pressure. Leaks appear in dozens of locations. Still, the sonar pings find them. The escorts above coordinate perfectly, one maintaining ASDIC contact, while others position for depth charge runs. When the attacks come, they are precisely targeted. Charges explode at exactly 300 meters depth. The submarine's pressure hull cracks. Seawater floods in. Only 8 men escape the sinking boat. 44 drown. U-531, a new boat on her first patrol, is detected on May 6th by an RAF Liberator equipped with airborne radar. The aircraft surprises the submarine on the surface at night when U-boat commanders had previously felt safe. The Liberator's lee light illuminates the boat from half a mile away. Depth charges fall before the crew can dive. The submarine is damaged but remains afloat. Escorts home in on the radar contact, obtain ASDIC contact, and finish the kill with a coordinated attack. No survivors. UN-94, UN-25, U-438, U-657, U-273. The list grows longer each day. Some boats are destroyed by aircraft. Others fall to surface escorts. Many are hunted by combinations of air and surface forces working in perfect coordination. But nearly all are first detected by radar or sonar. The technological advantage has shifted so decisively that German submarines can barely operate. For German submarine crews still at sea during Black May, the psychological impact is devastating. Radio messages bring news of boat after boat failing to return. Friends and classmates vanish beneath the waves. The ocean, once a German hunting ground, has become a killing field where U-boats are the prey. And always, constantly, there is the pinging, the sonar pulses that reveal submarines have nowhere to hide. U-boat command tries to maintain operational effectiveness through denial. Orders from Berlin insist losses are temporary setbacks. New tactics are transmitted to boats at sea. Commanders are told to persevere, that the tide will turn. But the men in the submarines know better. They have experienced the relentless ASDIC tracking. They have survived depth charge attacks that seem to target their exact position. They have watched comrades die when hulls cracked under precisely placed explosions. No amount of propaganda can erase those experiences. Oberleutnant Herbert Werner, by now commanding his own boat U-415, experiences the new reality firsthand during a patrol in April 1944. In his memoir published decades later, he describes 3 days of continuous hunting. They were detected within hours of reaching their operational area. For 72 hours, escorts hunted them relentlessly. Allied sonar never lost contact. They dove to maximum depth, 300 meters. The hull groaned. Rivets popped. Still, the pinging found them. When they tried to escape on the surface at night, aircraft appeared with searchlights. There was no sanctuary left. They had become targets in a shooting gallery. Werner's patrol aboard U-415 would be among his shortest and most harrowing. The boat departed La Palisse on April 10, 1944, assigned to patrol the western approaches to the English Channel. Werner knew the mission was nearly suicidal. Allied air and sea patrols had made the Bay of Biscay crossing a nightmare. Submarines could no longer surface safely, even at night. The new snorkel breathing tube allowed diesel engine operation while submerged, but Allied radar could detect even this small protrusion above the waves. U-415 made it through the Bay of Biscay by remaining submerged for 18 hours at a stretch. When the boat finally reached open Atlantic waters on April 15th, Werner surfaced briefly to recharge batteries fully. Within 20 minutes, an RAF Liberator appeared on the horizon. The aircraft had detected U-415's radar emissions before Werner's lookouts had spotted the plane. The submarine crash-dived with seconds to spare. Depth charges fell astern, damaging the stern torpedo tube, but leaving the boat operational. For the next 60 hours, U-415 remained submerged, running on electric motors, creeping away from the patrol area at 3 knots. Werner knew that Allied hunter-killer groups coordinated their searches. An aircraft detection would bring surface escorts racing to the area. Sure enough, on April 18th, ASDIC pings began echoing through the hull. An escort had picked up their trail. Werner dove deeper to 250 meters and slowed to silent running speed. The pinging continued. The escort above them had solid contact and maintained it hour after hour. Werner tried every evasive technique. He altered course 90 degrees. The pinging followed. He increased speed briefly, then slowed again, hoping to confuse the ASDIC operator. The pinging intensified, indicating the escort was closing. He released a Pillenwerfer bubble decoy. The pinging never wavered. The Allied operator was experienced enough to distinguish genuine submarine echoes from decoys. After 8 hours of continuous contact, depth charges began to fall. The patterns were frighteningly accurate. Explosions occurred at precisely 250 meters depth, exactly where U-415 was running. Werner took the boat deeper still to 300 meters. Paint peeled from bulkheads under the pressure. The hull groaned continuously. Men stood rigid at their stations, faces white with fear. The attack continued through the night and into the next morning. Werner's crew was exhausted. The boat's batteries were nearly depleted. Air quality was dangerously poor. He faced an impossible choice: surface and fight, certainly dying under the escort's guns. Remain submerged until batteries died, then surface and surrender, or try to outlast the hunter, hoping it would run low on fuel or depth charges. Werner chose to wait. For 16 hours, U-415 crept through the depths while death circled overhead. Finally, the pinging stopped. The escort had expended all depth charges and departed. Werner waited 4 more hours, then surfaced to find empty ocean. The boat limped back toward France. Mission aborted. Crew traumatized. U-4 and 15 never made another war patrol. She was sunk in her bunker at Toulon by Allied air attack in July 1944. Werner survived only because he was ashore when the bombs fell. The technological gap was widening with each passing month. By mid-1943, Allied escorts carried not just improved sonar but an entire anti-submarine warfare system. High-frequency direction finding, called Huff-Duff by operators, could triangulate U-boat radio transmissions. Radar could detect surfaced submarines at night or in fog. Sonobuoys dropped from aircraft created underwater listening networks that monitored vast areas. Ahead-throwing weapons like Hedgehog and Squid projected depth charge patterns forward while maintaining sonar contact, eliminating the dead zone that had previously allowed submarines to escape. The integration of these systems created a detection network greater than the sum of its parts. A typical convoy in mid-1943 was protected by 8 escorts, each carrying ASDIC, radar, and Huff-Duff. Aircraft from Iceland, Britain, or escort carriers provided air cover. The mid-Atlantic gap, where U-boats had previously operated beyond aircraft range, had been closed by very long-range liberators, flying from Newfoundland and Northern Ireland. Every square mile of ocean the convoy traversed was monitored by multiple overlapping sensor systems. When a U-boat approached such a convoy, detection was nearly inevitable. If the boat transmitted radio signals to coordinate with other submarines, Huff-Duff triangulated its position and escorts raced to the area. If it surfaced at night to shadow the convoy, radar detected it and aircraft attacked. If it submerged to approach underwater, ASDIC picked up the target. The submarine had essentially 3 choices, all bad: remain distant and unable to attack, close on the surface and be destroyed by aircraft, close submerged and be destroyed by escorts. The Hedgehog weapon system revolutionized anti-submarine attacks. Earlier depth charge attacks required escorts to pass over a submarine, dropping charges astern and losing ASDIC contact in the final moments of the attack. Hedgehog fired 24 small bombs forward in an elliptical pattern, while the escort maintained ASDIC contact throughout the attack. Each bomb contained 35 pounds of Torpex explosive, armed by contact with a hard surface. If all 24 bombs missed, they sank to the bottom without exploding, and the escort could immediately fire another pattern. If even one bomb struck the submarine's hull, the explosion would detonate adjacent bombs, creating a devastating blast that could crack pressure hulls. German submarine commanders quickly learned to fear Hedgehog attacks. Unlike conventional depth charges, which exploded whether they hit anything or not, Hedgehog gave instant feedback. Silence meant a miss, explosions meant a hit, and hits were usually fatal. The psychological impact was significant. Depth charge attacks, while terrifying, could be survived even when charges exploded nearby. Hedgehog hits were almost always lethal. The Squid system, introduced in late 1943, was even more deadly. 3 large mortars fired patterns of 3 depth charges 250 yards ahead of the attacking ship. Unlike Hedgehog, Squid charges were set to explode at specific depths, calculated by an automatic computer that processed ASDIC data. The system compensated for submarine evasive maneuvers, predicting where the target would be when charges reached preset depth. Squid-equipped frigates achieved a kill rate of 25% per attack, compared to less than 5% for conventional depth charge attacks. German countermeasures proved woefully inadequate. The Pillenwerfer, a chemical device that created bubble streams to decoy sonar, fooled only inexperienced operators. Veteran ASDIC operators quickly learned to distinguish the chaotic echo, signature of bubbles from the solid return of a steel hull. After a few seconds, experienced operators could ignore Pillenwerfer decoys completely. Bold, officially designated Kobold, was a more sophisticated decoy. This 1-meter balloon, coated with aluminum strips and filled with calcium hydride, rose slowly from deep water. When it reached shallower depths, seawater reacted with the calcium hydride to produce hydrogen gas, keeping the balloon neutrally buoyant. To radar, it appeared to be a submarine snorkel. To ASDIC, it produced a valid echo. But Bold had severe limitations. It could only be deployed from stationary submarines. It rose too slowly to protect a submarine during evasive maneuvers, and it did not move horizontally, so any ASDIC operator who maintained contact for more than a few minutes would realize the target was not actually a submarine. Absorbent hull coatings to reduce sonar reflection were researched extensively, but never successfully deployed. The Germans called it Alberich, after the dwarf in Wagner's opera who possessed a cloak of invisibility. The concept was sound. A rubber coating mixed with air bubbles would absorb incoming sonar pulses rather than reflecting them. Laboratory tests showed promise, but practical application proved impossible. The coating had to be several centimeters thick to be effective. It added tremendous weight. It degraded rapidly in seawater. Most critically, it could not withstand the pressure changes of deep diving. The coating would compress at depth, losing its sound-absorbing properties, then expand irregularly when the submarine surfaced, creating gaps and tears. After months of research and testing on captured U-boats, the Allies concluded Alberich was ineffective. German scientists, working with even fewer resources, came to the same conclusion. The fundamental problem was that German engineers had spent 20 years developing pro-submarine technology, improving U-boats' ability to find targets while largely ignoring anti-submarine defenses. When Allied detection systems matured, Germany had no effective response. The Kriegsmarine had assumed incorrectly that future naval warfare would resemble past patterns. They had prepared to fight the last war, while the Allies had developed technologies for an entirely new kind of warfare. The human cost mounted with horrifying speed. In September 1942, 3,000 U-boat men were at sea in operational boats. By August 1944, 28,000 of the 40,000 men who had served in the U-boat force were dead. The survival rate for submarine crews fell below 30%. Every patrol became a near-certain death sentence. Yet the Kriegsmarine continued sending boats out even as green crews replaced the experienced commanders who had carried the early war's success. Feldwebel Wolfgang Hirschfeld, transferred to the larger Type 9D submarine U-234 in early 1944, wrote of the psychological breakdown among crews. The new men are terrified before we even leave port. They have heard the statistics. They know 3 boats out of 4 never return. When the sonar pings begin, some men weep. Others simply shut down mentally, staring at bulkheads, unable to function. The veterans try to maintain discipline, but we know the truth as well as the novices. We are sailing in iron coffins. The advent of snorkel technology in mid-1944 offered brief hope. This extendable breathing tube allowed U-boats to run diesel engines while remaining submerged, eliminating the need to surface for battery recharging. Boats could theoretically stay underwater for entire patrols, but Allied radar quickly adapted, detecting even the small snorkel head above water. And submerged U-boats, whether snorkeling or running on batteries, remained vulnerable to increasingly sophisticated sonar. The snorkel itself was Dutch technology captured when Germany occupied the Netherlands in 1940. The original Dutch design was simple: a tube extending above the water surface to provide air to diesel engines while the submarine ran at periscope depth. German engineers refined the concept, adding automatic valves that sealed the tube when waves washed over it, preventing flooding. They also installed exhaust systems that vented diesel fumes underwater, eliminating the smoke plume that had made surfaced submarines visible for miles. In practice, snorkel operations were miserable. The submarine had to maintain precise depth control, keeping the snorkel head just above the surface. Too deep and the automatic valve would close, causing diesel engines to suck air from inside the boat. Crew members experienced agonizing ear pain as pressure dropped suddenly. Too shallow, and the conning tower would break surface, making the boat visible to aircraft and surface radar. Rough seas made depth control nearly impossible. Waves constantly washed over the snorkel head, causing the valve to open and close repeatedly. Each closure created painful pressure changes inside the boat. Up next, You've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.